Hello everyone. Tonight we'll step into a world full of blood and betrayal, where a single wrong glance or an extra word could cost you your life. This isn't a story of romantic love, but a bloody fight for survival in Henry VIII's palace, where ruthless power crushes even the bravest hearts. Prepare yourself, because you're about to witness the life of the king's mistress, a dark journey filled with murderous schemes and life or death choices that no one dares speak of. Before you lean back and get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely enjoy the content I share, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's fascinating to see people following from all over the world. Now, turn off the lights, maybe switch on a fan for some background noise, and let's dive into tonight's journey together. Today, we don't start with a beautiful fairy tale love story. No rainbows, no weddings, no love blossoming by candlelight and lute melodies. Instead, you've just received a letter sealed with wax, as red as dried blood from Hampton Court Palace. The good news, you've been honored with a summons to court. The bad news, no one knows why. Your mother weeps as if you're already dead. Your father, silent, rests his hand on your shoulder before retreating to the chicken coop, where he feels safer thinking about Henry VIII. The neighbors don't dare congratulate you. They just cast glances that say, "I once saw my cat summoned to the royal kitchen, and now it's stew." You climb into a carriage at dawn, when the fog still reeks of damp straw and horse dung, your heart torn between pride and despair. The palace looms like a stone beast, with watchtowers, grand gates, and red-coated guards whose eyes never blink. You think you'll be assigned as a maid, cleaning rooms, washing linens, or brewing tea. But no, the woman leading you says nothing. She moves quickly, as if someone's chasing her, or she's trying to get away from you as fast as possible. She guides you through dozens of stone-paved corridors, past carved wooden walls, and enormous portraits of nobles staring at you, like you're the latest entertainment. You stop before a massive door. Inside is the antechamber of the Queen's apartments, a place for those specially regarded. No one says it aloud, but their eyes say everything. Another maid, silver-haired, hollow-eyed, hands scarred from kitchen work, whispers in your ear, "Pray, if you still believe in anything." Before you can ask more, she vanishes like smoke. You're taken to a private room. There's a bed, a basin of warm water, a mirror, a new dress, and a handwritten note from someone you've never met, but whose name the whole country knows, Henry. The letter says only a few words. "Welcome. I look forward to meeting you soon." You hold the paper, trembling as if it's a knife. "No one's called you, my dear. Since you were a child, now the king does." And the word "soon" makes the sky feel like it's darkening, though it's barely past noon. You look in the mirror. It reflects a face never properly made up, hair hastily tied, and eyes both astonished and afraid. You don't see a lover in the mirror. You see a victim preparing for execution, with red lipstick and a silk gown. Beyond that door is the king, who's married 6 times, beheaded wives, whose swollen knees don't dull the sharpness of his voice. And now he knows you exist. Congratulations, you've been summoned to court. And no, not to serve tea. This is an interview with no application needed, and the axe is already being sharpened. Welcome to the Tudor court, where every smile could be a trap, and every nod a death sentence waiting to be carried out. From now on, you no longer live for yourself. You live to please a king who's grown bored with love and far too skilled at ordering executions. You're awakened at dawn by the distant toll of church bells and the steady march of guards outside the corridor, like the heartbeat of the castle. A maid knocks on your door, saying little beyond a curt, "The king wishes to see you." She turns away quickly, as if lingering near you for another second might curse her. You're dressed, your hair neatly pinned, your neck adorned with a cold strand of pearls like gravestones. As you walk down the corridor, light filters through stained glass windows, making the floor look like frozen blood, and you swear something watches you from the paintings on the walls, eyes of women from ages past, who walked where you walk now, and now exist only in frames heavy with the scent of gloom. The great door opens, and you step into a room too vast to hold secrets, but too silent to hide danger. Henry VIII sits in the center, like a blazing mountain, his massive body draped in silk, velvet, and gold, his red beard groomed as carefully as a second crown. His eyes don't blink as you curtsy, No one speaks. Thus you hear only the creak of silk upholstery as he leans forward, the clink of his sword belt against the chair, and then, the moment every vein in you freezes, he laughs. Not a warm laugh, not a kind one, but the laugh of a man who has everything, and is choosing his next toy. He says your name, not lady, not girl, but your name, clearly, slowly, as if tasting it on his tongue. You try to respond, but your throat is so dry, you swallow 3 times before managing. Your Majesty. He lifts a goblet, eyes never leaving you, and says, I like your eyes, not because they're beautiful, but because they don't yet know fear. Wrong. You're terrified. So terrified that cold sweat has soaked your dress's lining. But you also know that admitting it might send you back to your room, or straight to the dungeon. Henry stands, even moving slowly. He makes you feel like a deer cornered by a predator. He steps within a few handspans of you, close enough for you to smell his heavy breath, laced with wine and roasted meat. He reaches out, not to shake hands. Henry VIII doesn't shake hands. He takes a stray lock of hair from your forehead, tucks it back and says, ever so softly, like a lullaby from a crypt, you're different from them. You want to ask, who are they? But you don't dare, because any name you utter, Catherine, Anne, Jane, could be your final misstep. Henry circles you once. You feel like a horse being inspected before a race or a scaffold. He sits, waving for attendants to bring trays of fruit and wine. Sit, he says. But there's no chair except his. You stand. He laughs loudly. Wise girl. Everyone laughs along, no one knowing why. You laugh too. A tight, painful smile, like chewing gravel. Henry raises his goblet again. They say I'm difficult, he says. But really, I'm just bored. And his eyes, those eyes, sweep over you again, this time hiding nothing. He's not looking for conversation, not poetry, not courtship, but possession. No one in the room dares breathe loudly. Even the birds outside the window fall silent. You stand before an old, massive, weary beast, but one with claws still sharp, and those claws are itching. Do you dance? He asks. You shake your head. Good, he laughs. I hate women who are too good at too many things. You don't know whether to be relieved or cry. Henry waves a hand. The meeting ends like a successful horse inspection. You're led out, legs barely reel. When you return to your room, you find something new on the bed. A red silk ribbon. No note, no message, but enough to make it clear, you've been chosen. No flowers, no consultation, no time to think. You were seen, and that was enough to redirect your life down a path from which no woman before you has ever returned to tell the tale. Henry VIII has seen you, not like others see you, but as if choosing the choicest cut of meat for a feast, and you are the main course. You think you're special, everyone does, for the first 3 days, that you'll be different, that you'll change the king's heart, make him forget his past marriages, the blood spilled on the block. Anne Boleyn's head, rolling in the tower's courtyard, like a dishonored ball, fumbled in a game. But that same night, as you sit alone in your room, there's a knock at the door, light as a breath. An old court lady named Margaret, teeth mostly gone, eyes cloudy as winter pond water, pushes the door open without waiting for permission. She sets a tray of small cakes on the table and whispers, "You're the new one." You nod, and she sits uninvited, as if too familiar with this role. She doesn't ask your name. No need, no one cares who you are, because soon you'll be a story for others to tell. "I served Catherine," she begins, her bony fingers tapping the chair's arm. Catherine of Aragon, his first wife. 18 years together. One daughter, Mary. Then one day, he declared her not his true wife. Marriage annulled. She was confined to a convent, died alone, forbidden from seeing her daughter. No head rolled, but her soul was shattered. You swallow hard. She doesn't stop. Anne Boleyn, young, sharp, witty, a poet. He loved her so much, he defied the Pope, built a new church to marry her. And then, when she bore a daughter, not a son, Margaret pauses. The air chills, as if an invisible dungeon window has opened somewhere in the castle. 3 years after the wedding, she was accused of incest, adultery, plotting against the king. No evidence, no witnesses, just a trial, and a head severed so cleanly, the executioner bowed in admiration. You clutch your skirt. Margaret glances at you. as if deciding whether to continue. She does, her voice lower. Jane Seymour. Sweet, gentle, never argued, gave him a son, Edward. Died of childbed fever. 2 weeks later, Henry built her a white marble tomb. The only time I saw him cry, for 3 days. You ask, who else? Margaret laughs dryly, like wind through a chimney. Anne of Cleves, chosen from a portrait. When he met her, he called her ugly as a hag. Marriage annulled in weeks, not killed, just discarded. Called his good sister. Survived by vanishing. She pauses, letting you fill in the rest. You say nothing. Margaret sighs. Catherine Howard. 30 years younger than him. Lively, reckless. Accused of adultery, this time with evidence. Her head fell fast. She begged to live. Henry didn't listen. You can't breathe. Margaret stands. The last, Catherine Parr. Clever, calm, twice widowed before. Nearly executed for debating theology with him. Lucky, she feigned illness, begged forgiveness, dodged the axe, survived until he died. She looks at you one last time. Now it's your turn. Then she leaves, leaving the room darker, though the candles still burn. You look at your hands. They tremble, not from fear of death, but from knowing that if you live, you won't be yourself anymore. You're not the first, and certainly not the last. In this court, women don't live to love, they live to be lessons or warnings. The church bells ring again, 3 times, one for the past, one for the present, one for the next head, which might be yours. The next morning, you're not awakened by a gentle knock but by the door bursting open, and 2 maids entering, as if you're a lifeless doll to be prepared for display. No greetings, no smiles, just orders wrapped in a voice as cold as sackcloth. The king wishes you to dine tonight in the Great Hall. The last 3 words, Great Hall, sound no different from operating table. One maid places a deep red silk gown on the bed, soft as a final breath, and so smooth that candlelight reflects off its folds like congealed blood on a freshly sharpened blade. The dress is expertly tailored, fitting your waist so tightly that each breath is a negotiation with death. The sleeves are embroidered with silver thread, the neckline lower than safe for any woman living among a pack of velvet-clad foxes. Before you can protest, the maids begin dressing you, as if you no longer have the right to touch your own body. Your hair is brushed, roughly, then pinned up, adorned with a silver hairpin shaped like a Tudor rose, the king's emblem, as if branding your scalp. A layer of pale powder is applied to make you elegant, meaning you look half dead. Then red lipstick, the color that has sent countless women to their graves, for being too beautiful, too noticeable, or simply too close to Henry. When you look in the mirror, you don't recognize yourself. Not because you're too stunning, but because you look too much like the portrait in the western corridor. Anne Boleyn, before she was led to the scaffold, in a dress not unlike the one you're wearing. When it's done, the older maid hands you silk slippers. For standing, she says, don't think about running. You walk down the corridor, as if climbing the final steps to the gallows. People stare, some bow, some turn away. No one smiles, no one compliments you. Because everyone knows, when a girl is called to the Great Hall, in a red dress with her hair pinned high, the game has begun. And this game has no clear rules, except one. If Henry likes you, you might live. For a while, you enter the Great Hall as the eerie sounds of lutes and hand drums rise. Everyone takes their seats. You're placed closer to the throne than anyone without royal blood. Henry sits there, radiant and heavy, like a lion dozing after a feast. But when he sees you, he sits up straight, one corner of his mouth curling as if he's won a bet. He doesn't need to say anything. Everyone understands you've been marked, like a deer before it's brought back to the palace as a trophy. As you sit, Henry leans toward you and asks, almost in a whisper, like a question floating on a lake before a stone drops, do you know what this dress's color means? You don't answer. You don't dare. Henry smiles. It's the color of rebirth. And also the last color someone wore before I had to send them away. No one laughs. Neither do you. The feast continues. But to you, every spoonful of soup tastes metallic, and every glance from the courtiers feels like a cut to your mental wrists. When the feast ends, you're invited to stay for another glass of wine, meaning you have no choice. Henry hands you a goblet, his lips already staining the rim red, and now you must place your lips there too. You drink, and in the moment, the wine slides down your throat. You understand more clearly than ever. This dress isn't just adornment. It's a banner, a warning, a death sentence in silk, signed with grape juice, and a king's sweet smile, a king bored with love, and far too practiced at ending it. As you leave the hall, no one escorts you, no one speaks, but you know, they all saw, they all know. And now, the red dress has chosen you, or rather, it's how the world knows Henry has chosen you. From now on, survival is a game, and this dress is your prisoner's uniform. That first night in the palace, you thought you wouldn't sleep from anxiety, but it turns out you can't sleep because of the bed. The bed is exquisitely carved, polished ebony with silk curtains embroidered with Tudor angels and dragons, but that's all it has going for it. The mattress is hard as dungeon paving stones. The silk smells musty from years of neglect mixed with cold ash from an unlit fireplace, and the pillow, if you can call it that, feels like a sack of battered grain. You lie there, eyes wide open, not from panic, but from a clarity so sharp that every tiny sound rings like a death knell in your mind. The creak of the attic bed, the footsteps on the stone corridor, the mournful sigh from nowhere, maybe the next room, maybe a deeper floor, or maybe a woman who wore a red dress before you. Wind seeps through the thick stone window, though it's shut tight, making the oil lamp flicker, your shadow dancing on the wall, as if performing your own funeral. The scent lingers on your dress, the royal perfume dabbed on your neck, nape and wrists before the feast, a cloying sweetness like honey, mixed with old wine and dried blood. You try to loosen the silk sash to breathe easier, but your fingers are numb. You're not sure if you're trembling from cold, or because your mind is racing with 1,000 thoughts at once. If the king dislikes you, where will you be sent? If he likes you too much, will you survive the winter? If you flee, who will find you first? The guards or the hounds? You close your eyes, open them, still dark. The wall opposite shows a long water stain like blood flowing upward. You turn your head, then freeze. Footsteps outside your door, light, slow, not a guard, not a maid, someone standing there. No knock, no voice, just standing. You hold your breath like someone submerged in water. The darkness in the room thickens, and in the pause between two heartbeats, you hear it, a faint whisper, like it's coming from the stone itself. Don't look at him too long. You bolt up, rush to the door, fling it open. No one. The corridor is empty. The oil lamp a few steps away flickers like a dying man's eyes. No footsteps, no glimpse of a cloak, but the air smells of something, damp, sweet, and old. You return, shut the door, bolt it with both wooden bars, and drag a chair to block it. You no longer feel safe, though you're in England's grandest palace, guarded by dozens of armored men, because you know this palace isn't built to protect you. It's a gilded box to keep you inside. You crawl back to bed, curling under the heavy wool blanket, smelling like it was forgotten in a royal morgue. You don't dream, you can't, but you remember vividly Henry's eyes on you at the feast. Not the look of one person to another, but the look of someone imagining how your neck would look adorned with a white lace collar on the morning of your execution. You shudder. Outside, the church bells toll again, not for prayer this time, for the watch, the third watch, the coldest, the quietest, the most fragile, the moment when, if a soul wanted to slip away, it would choose to flee. You close your eyes, your hand still clutches the silk sash of your dress, and you think if this is the bed of a royal mistress, it must be where love begins with candle wax, giggles and handwritten notes. But no, this is your bed, and tonight, it's not for love, it's for waiting, waiting for fate, waiting for a summons, waiting for the next day, or not, and you in the dress forced upon you, with a heart squeezed as tight as your chest right now, can only lie still, not to sleep, but to survive until morning. If morning truly comes, the morning arrives, not with gentle sunlight or birdsong, but with the abrupt clank of a door bolt, and an unfamiliar maid entering with a face, as if she's just sent another girl to her grave. "Get dressed," she says, her voice flat, neither kind nor cruel, just indifferent, as if you're a tablecloth misplaced. On the bed is a new gown, deep green silk. You take it, drink a sip, the wine sliding down your throat like a velvet blade. He continues, "They say I've changed, that I've grown old, that I'm cruel." He turns to you, so close. You smell musk mixed with iron in his breath. What do you think? You don't know what you said. Maybe you shook your head. Maybe you gave a faint smile. Maybe you just looked down. But whatever your reaction, Henry laughs, as if he's heard the funniest answer of his life. And in that laugh you see clearly, this isn't the laugh of a man who likes you. It's the laugh of someone used to wielding a blade, and deciding whether to sharpen it or leave it dull to prolong the game. At the end of the meeting, Henry stands. You rise too, like a shadow with no choice. He places a hand on your shoulder, heavy as a tombstone seal. There's a ball tonight, he says. I look forward to seeing you dance. Then he leaves, without looking back, leaving you in a room silent as a crypt, with an unfinished goblet, and a fear yet to be named. That man just smiled at you. But in his eyes, you saw no hope, no feeling, just blood. Blood of others. Blood in memory. Blood in plans. And perhaps your own blood. After that haunting evening with Henry, you thought the next day would pass like a malignant dream quickly forgotten. But no, waking in the morning, still trying to pull the heavy wool blanket over your trembling body, there's a gentle but commanding knock at the door. Another maid announces, "The cardinal wishes to see you now." You don't know who the cardinal is, but you quickly realize this isn't a casual invitation. It's part of the deadly power game you've unwittingly entered. As you're led through cold stone corridors and past religious paintings of stern saints and martyrs, your heart feels gripped by an invisible hand. Finally, you're brought to a small, solemn room, stifling with the scent of incense, where the cardinal sits in a resplendent red robe and a heavy mitre, as if pressing the dark heavens down on your head. His gaze isn't that of an ordinary man, but of a high priest eyeing a sacrifice for the gods. He studies you closely, as if weighing whether you're a worthy offering for the Tudor court's favour, or just a discardable trinket. You feel tiny thorns prick your skin, as he lifts a hand and slowly strokes the gold bracelet on your wrist, his cold, steady fingers like a noose tightening around your neck. He speaks of faith, of salvation, but you quickly realize these aren't words of comfort, but veiled warnings. Obey, stay silent, or accept the fate of traitors. The cardinal tells you of women who stood before the throne, hoping for love and acceptance, only to be cast into the abyss of sin and curses, not just by Henry, but by the church, where power and privilege always pair with severity and cruelty. He speaks of the sin of betrayal, the virtue you must uphold, and prayers that won't save you if you don't maintain absolute loyalty to king and church. In his every word you hear echoes of ancient curses, sentences without trials, deaths cloaked in the guise of faith and redemption. You begin to feel less like a free person, and more like an offering prepared for a mystic ritual you can't comprehend or escape. The cardinal stands, steps closer, his eyes never leaving you for a second, then places an old book on the table before you. "This," he says, "is the book of laws for faith and power. Read it and understand that every oath, every gesture, every thought of yours will be recorded, and you will answer not only to the king but to God." You look at the book's pages, its tiny script, smudged silver ink, words chilling your heart: treason, heresy, sin, punishment. From now on, it's not just about surviving or dying, it's about keeping your soul from burning in the flames of sin and eternal curses. The cardinal leaves, abandoning you with the book, and a suffocating sense of standing on the brink of spiritual apocalypse. You know you must live wisely, keep secrets, but that doesn't ease the fear in your heart, for you're not just facing a temperamental king, but an invisible, ever-present force, always watching, ready to punish the errant. You step out of the room, heart pounding, each step dragging on the heavy ground of unseen dangers. The cardinal's gaze, still vivid in your mind, makes you realize that in this game, faith isn't just solace but a double-edged sword, capable of saving you or killing you at any moment. You tell yourself to survive this palace, you don't just need to look beautiful, but to perform rituals, keep secrets, and most crucially, know how to be a sacrifice at the right time, in the right place, before eyes that never blink. The next day in the palace, you learn the most vital lesson: how to kneel before the king, without ever daring to raise your head. No one tells you this outright, but you grasp it through every glance, every nod from veteran maids, and the stern silence of Henry VIII himself. Each morning, you must rise before dawn, don a heavy gown, and walk through icy corridors with steps as cautious as a soldier entering battle. You're taught to bow at the precise angle, not too low to seem weak, nor too high to seem insolent. Your hands are guided to rest in the correct position, not on your lap, not loose or waving, and your eyes must always look at the floor or an undefined distance ahead, never meeting the king's gaze. The first time you kneel before the throne, your heart feels like it might burst from your chest, cold sweat beading on your skin. Henry sits there, stern and resolute, watching you like a hunter eyeing prey. You try to stay still, not breathing heavily, not moving suddenly, but your heart pounds like a war drum. Even when the king speaks, you respond only with a slight nod or a soft yes. Around you, other maids kneel and rise like soulless machines, but their eyes, those cold survivalist eyes, make you shudder. They're not friends or allies, they're just waiting for their next chance, or for a whirlwind to sweep someone from the palace. You learn a costly lesson in this palace. Raising your head isn't just impolite, but the first sign of defiance, of difference, and difference in Henry's eyes is deadly dangerous. You observe the veteran maids, their eyes always cloudy as stagnant water, reflecting no emotion, though inside they may burn like fire. They teach you to control your breathing, to move lightly as a ghost, to avoid disturbing the king or his courtiers. You also learn to listen in silence, for whispered words in the palace often carry more danger than any sword. One day, you witness a new maid caught looking directly into Henry's eyes while he was angry. Her punishment wasn't just a scolding, but cold ostracism, and being sent to solitary confinement in a dark dungeon. No one knows her fate, only hearing her cries echo from below on quiet nights. You don't want to be her, and that's when you realize kneeling isn't just a ritual, but the armor protecting your life. Each time Henry passes, you bow so low your head nearly touches the ground, feeling his breath like a cold gust, your heart trembling with fear. Sometimes, Henry merely raises a finger as a signal, and everyone knows it's your cue to move, speak, or act. But you also know a single misstep, a clumsy gesture, or an ill-timed glance could condemn you. You realize that in this court, power isn't overt authority, but the ability to stay silent and obey invisible rules no one dares break. You spend every hour practicing self-control, learning to become the perfect puppet in this perilous game of power. You look in the mirror, wondering if you can survive the coming months, when survival seems to hinge not on strength or talent, but on kneeling without breaking your neck. That's the first lesson, but also the most crucial to surviving the deadly game of being Henry VIII's mistress. You learn to kneel before the king, but you know one thing clearly: you'll never be allowed to raise your head. Henry's jealousy isn't like anything you've heard or imagined, not the gentle jealousy or petty arguments seen on stage or in fairy tales, but a ferocious, cold, and ruthless jealousy so deadly that no one survives to tell its full story. You begin to notice it in the smallest signs: the king's gaze when he looks at other maids, the way he grips his goblet until his fingertips turn white, the way courtiers bow and avoid mentioning your name in hushed discussions. One day, you accidentally catch Henry's suspicious glance when a guard laughs with you in the corridor. That look isn't of a man amused, but of a predator sensing its latest prey, showing signs of resistance. Then the horrors begin. The young guard is suddenly ordered to the Scottish border war, where no one returns intact. Whispers in the court about women who got close to Henry and vanished mysteriously echo in your mind. Each time the king appears, the air grows taut as a bowstring, every eye on you, as if you're standing on a vast block waiting for the final command to bring the blade down. You hear of someone caught whispering to another maid, and days later she's gone from the harem. Someone vanishes mysteriously, no reason given, only that Henry was furious because they failed to keep him pleased. You tell yourself to be doubly cautious, for the king's jealousy isn't just emotional, it's a weapon of power used to control and instill fear in every soul in the palace. Every word, every small gesture could be deemed betrayal or scheming, and the only outcome is death or unexplained disappearance. You witness a young girl, once favored, become the target of suspicion and taken away in the night, all for a vague tale spun from courtiers' whispers. The king's jealousy is like a storm, unpredictable, sweeping through the harem, leaving chaos and death. You feel the fear, not just enveloping you, but permeating every corner of the palace, from lavish rooms to dark corridors, where a wrong look or stray word could end a life. It's like a black shadow trailing you, inescapable, no matter where you flee. You try to stay silent, avoid drawing the king's or his powerful courtiers' attention, but each day you realize existing in this palace is a race for survival against a king's raging jealousy, a king who beheaded wives over mere suspicion. It's not about emotions, but about power, survival, and the clarity to avoid becoming the next prey in this deadly game. You learn to read every glance, every subtle gesture, every veiled word to know when to stay silent, when to yield, and when to vanish into the shadows before it's too late. The king's jealousy is a monstrous force no one has fully survived to describe, but you know it's watching you, breathing with you, waiting for one small mistake to strip away everything you have, including your life. From the outside, Hampton Court Palace might awe anyone with its grandeur, pristine white stone walls, soaring windows, towers stretching to touch the deep blue sky, as if separating this world from the mundane beyond. But don't be fooled by its beauty, for once inside, you quickly realize this isn't a palace for rest or pleasure, but a cold stone trap where life and death are woven into every brick, every whitewashed wall. You walk through endless corridors, dim light filtering through stained glass windows, casting vivid patches on dark stone floors, enough to reveal tiny cracks, aged stains never cleaned, as if the palace itself silently mourns the cruel fates of those imprisoned within. Every room is elaborately decorated with tapestries, hand-woven rugs, and intricately carved wood, but that opulence is merely a thick veneer, masking the profound loneliness and terror you feel each time you close your chamber door. You realize there's no truly safe escape in this palace, for every door is heavily guarded, every corridor watched by the cold eyes of guards and courtiers. The palace is a labyrinth of power, an invisible web where those who don't know how to evade or lack favor get trapped and slowly crushed under the weight of schemes and suspicion. You've heard tales of maids and consorts before you, locked away in secret rooms or solitary dungeons below, their screams mere forgotten echoes in cold stone walls. You see shadows flitting through corridors, eyes glinting in the dark as if whispering warnings. Don't let the palace's splendor deceive you. You try to gather information, listening to hushed murmurs from other maids, furtive letters exchanged in haste, and coded glances from those who've survived or tried to escape this vortex. Every story shares one truth. The palace's beauty is an inescapable trap, where sweetness masks cruelty, where survival depends on staying in the shadows or pleasing those in power. Your body feels frozen in the palace's chilly air, each step through its long corridors like dragging pieces of your soul, each pause before a closed door, making you wonder, is this the door to freedom, or to eternal disappearance? Though you've learned to bow, to smile just enough, to speak cautiously, it doesn't ease the suffocation of being confined within these unfeeling walls. You begin to see the palace not as a refuge, but as a forest full of traps, where one wrong step could plunge you into a bottomless pit. As night falls, the palace's light grows dimmer, shadows thickening, seeping into every corner, every door crack. You hear wind whistling through gaps, carrying murmurs like whispers of unquiet spirits. You lie on a bed hard as stone, under a heavy blanket,
smelling like it's been forgotten,
in a royal morgue, wondering how long you can survive in the lavish trap Henry VIII set for those he favors. Each day, you realize the palace isn't just the king's domain, but a place where dreams are strangled, hopes crushed, and people turned into pawns in a game of power and survival. You're no longer the young girl who entered with dreams, but part of a brutal game where only those who endure and sacrifice can survive. And you understand, no matter how beautiful or grand, Hampton Court Palace is just a cold stone trap where the unwary and weak are frozen, forgotten, and buried forever in history's endless darkness. You step into the palace with a heart brimming with hope, believing you'll be loved, accepted, and live a life with at least a glimmer of light amidst this cold darkness. But you quickly realize that love in the Tudor court isn't the free or sweet thing you heard about in fairy tales. Love here has a price, and you understand clearly that price might be your neck, placed on a block, awaiting the sharp blade of death. One day, at a royal banquet, in a grand hall lit by sparkling crystal chandeliers, you're summoned close to the throne. Henry VIII, the man with 6 wives, the man who makes all of England tremble, stands before you with a gaze both cold and lustful. He presents you with a priceless pearl necklace, a gift of exquisite beauty, but carrying a clear message. You belong to him, but you're also stepping into a deadly game. The women before you, names like Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, all received similar gifts before meeting tragic ends. You feel the weight of the necklace on your neck, like an invisible chain, binding your fate to the will of a powerful but ruthless king. No one in this palace gives gifts without purpose, and no one receives them without paying a steep price. Whispers in the court say the necklace isn't just a symbol of love or favor, but a sign that you've been chosen, and also targeted, a target who must maintain absolute loyalty, always restrain emotions, and never forget that a single mistake could plunge you into the abyss of suspicion and betrayal. You see other maids, once given similar precious jewels, now mere shadows in dim rooms or gone forever. Some were exiled, some imprisoned, and others lost their heads before the throne. A cold reminder that love here can swiftly turn into a death sentence. You realize that love in the palace isn't the emotion you imagined. It's a transaction, an unspoken but menacing contract, where you must weigh every action, word, and glance to avoid slipping into the trap of power and jealousy. Henry VIII isn't a lenient or forgiving man. He loves through possession and control, through intimidation and vengeance. And when his jealousy flares, no one escapes his cruelty, no matter how cherished you might be. You learn that to keep your place in the king's heart, you must always be vigilant, prepared for unannounced tests, and skilled at pleasing a man grown weary of love and life. Each day, the pressure weighs heavier on your shoulders, the pressure of a game where the reward is survival, and the penalty is death. You look at the glittering necklace around your neck. It's no longer mere jewelry, but a symbol of a curse. You can't remove it, can't reject it, and you know the price for this gift might be your life, freedom, or soul. Love here isn't simply affection, but power, life and death intertwined, something no one dares name but everyone feels every moment. You wonder if all you're doing is to keep a necklace on your neck, a place in the king's heart, or to survive days never peaceful, always threatened by sudden death. And you know no matter what, the price of love here is never cheap. It might cost you your very neck. You once thought you were a person, a young girl full of dreams and a desire to live, but stepping into Henry VIII's palace, you realize you're no longer a person. You've become prey in a bloody game of power, where every step, every glance could be your last. The vast palace with its endless corridors, heavy doors, and walls thick with schemes, is no home but a steel cage, trapping you within the control of an unseen but ever-lurking enemy. You're no longer called by your name, but by a title, a symbol of being chosen, and simultaneously, a target in the relentless rivalry among other women. Every whisper in the court, every calculating glance, every covert gesture could lead you to the edge of destruction. You learn to trust no one, to say only what's permitted, to never show personal feelings or opinions. Everything you do, how you walk, talk, frown, or smile, is scrutinized like a life or death game, where one wrong move costs everything. You become prey, not just because the king chose you, but because you're bait for those vying for power, status, and survival in the palace. Other maids are wolves in human guise, always watching, ready to tear each other apart, to climb higher, to be noticed, loved, or simply to survive. You're no longer the girl with innocent dreams, but part of a ruthless war, an arena where you're hunted, cornered, and controlled every second. You feel split into fragments, pieces of a game, where the board's pieces are the lives of those battling each other. Loneliness and fear become inseparable companions, like darkness clinging to you no matter where you run. You can't afford to falter or weaken, for a single moment of lapsed vigilance could see you eliminated, buried in the palace's shadows where there's no place for losers. Each night, on a cold bed, hearing distant footsteps, you don't know if they're guards or ghosts of past lovers. You wonder if you'll survive until morning, with the king's anger, other maids' envy, and courtiers' suspicions pressing like invisible knives at your throat. You learn to become invisible, like a ghost, like a beast hiding in deep woods, always listening, always alert, always waiting for a chance to live another day. You're no longer a person but prey to a bloodthirsty hunter, prey in the Tudor court's game of power, blood and tears. And you know surviving this game isn't about luck but about vigilance, resilience, and sometimes a ruthless coldness you never imagined possessing. You're called Henry VIII's mistress, a title that sounds sweet, honorable, powerful, but beneath its dazzling veneer, you're becoming an unchained prisoner, confined in a gilded jail where freedom is a distant illusion. The grand, splendid Hampton Court Palace isn't a refuge but an invisible iron cage, where every action, word, even breath is monitored and recorded by ever-watchful overseers. You're not free to leave, not allowed to meet anyone, except those permitted in the king's lovers area. Your interactions are restricted. Every letter sent or received is meticulously inspected, allowing no line of complaint, plea, or secret that could tarnish the king's reputation or power. You realize you're not just physically confined but shackled in an unwritten web of power and rules, where you must blindly obey without a voice. Those around you aren't true friends but fellow captives in this opulent, invisible prison, stripped of all freedom. You witness former lovers, once hailed as queens in the king's eyes, vanish without explanation, leaving only rumors and chilling tales of executions or confinement in dark underground rooms. Each day, you live in extreme tension and pressure, knowing a single mistake, a misplaced glance, or an unpleasing word could cost your life. You can't trust anyone, even those closest, for in this environment, loyalty is easily bought and quickly betrayed. Sometimes you wonder who you've become when you no longer control your own life. When dreams, hopes, and love become meaningless against the court's harsh rules, you grow quieter, more reserved, learning to smile lightly when needed, and bow your head when the king or courtiers look at you. You're no longer the free girl but a mistress, an unchained prisoner in an invisible jail where every wall is a curse. At night, as oil lamps dim, you lie in a cold room, hearing guards' footsteps pacing outside, each step reminding you freedom is a distant dream. You begin to understand that existing in this palace is a relentless struggle between life and death, hope and despair, love and betrayal. Though called a mistress, you know the title is a mask, hiding the harsh truth that you're trapped in a war with no escape. You learn to accept your role, but quietly seek chances to survive and preserve some shred of your identity. For even as an unchained prisoner, you're still human, fighting not to lose everything. You're led to the royal chapel, a place meant to uplift the soul and nurture faith, but to you it's like a cold stone coffin in the palace's heart. There, in the dim glow of candles dripping on ancient walls, you see a blank, smooth tombstone, but you know it's the final resting place of your predecessor. Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's once beloved, beheaded with her head severed in a grim morning at the Tower of London. Her story is told as a lesson in betrayal, suspicion, and the cruelty of unchecked power. You stand silently before her grave, feeling as if Anne's invisible eyes still watch your every move, a reminder that everything you do, every step in this palace, could lead to a similar fate. They say before her execution, Anne saw everything clearly, the false glamour of royalty, the utter loneliness in power, and the price of ambition and love. A chill runs down your spine as you think you might become her next iteration, remembered by history, not for deeds or fame, but for a tragic death and dark rumors. In the days that follow, you can't escape hearing whispered tales of other lovers' fates, women you never met, but whose names and deaths are inseparable from this palace. Each story brings a shudder, a silent warning that no matter how favored you are, you can't escape the ruthless vortex of power and jealousy. You live in a mix of awe and suspicion, unable to trust anyone, even yourself. In every face you see in the court, you glimpse Anne, a woman once strong, once radiant, but ultimately swept into eternal darkness. You can't shake the feeling that her eyes still watch, not to blame but to warn, reminding you the path you tread could end as tragically as hers. Each day, walking the palace's long, cold corridors, you feel like you're stepping in the footprints of those who fell before you, wondering if you can stay sane and strong enough not to be next. You realize surviving this palace isn't about luck or the king's favor, but about resilience, wisdom, and reading danger signals before it's too late. You learn to listen to whispers in the dark, to watch every subtle expression on surrounding faces, to stay perpetually alert. At night, as the palace sinks into darkness and candles die out, you can't forget the image of Anne Boleyn's head on the block, said to have closed its eyes as if sleeping, dreaming of another life, the life you too dreamed of when you entered this palace. And you know, even if you escape that fate today, the future holds countless dangers, cunning traps woven into every story, glance, and smile of Henry VIII. You silently vow that Anne Boleyn's eyes aren't just a ghost of the past, but a vivid reminder that in this power game there's no place for weak hearts, no place for those unable to face the cruel truth that love here isn't life, but the end of a road paved with blood and tears. More and more, you realize Henry VIII's words are no longer the cheerful banter or compliments you once hoped for. Instead, they're like commands, laden with hidden meanings and danger, so you dare not react, dare not answer, only bow your head in silence. Sometimes, he suddenly asks seemingly ordinary questions like, "Do you think I'm old, or do you see me as tired?" But each carries subtle traps where a wrong answer or misplaced emotion could make you a target of his anger or suspicion. Once, at a royal banquet filled with candlelight and lilting music, Henry looks at you with a chilling gaze, his voice soft but commanding. "Do you know why I like you? Not for beauty or wit, but because you listen." You want to reply, to say you don't just listen but understand, but then Henry interrupts with an unexpected question. "Would you dare tell me the truth?" You stay silent. That silence makes him nod approvingly, but it also tightens an invisible noose around your neck. Each of Henry's words is a test, a trial to see if you have the patience and wisdom to survive this palace. You can no longer freely express thoughts or feelings, for a single wrong word, an ill-timed glance, could cost you everything. You witness a new maid, for a slightly candid reply in a conversation with the king, stripped of her role and sent to solitary confinement. No one knows her fate, only that the palace grew colder, tenser, and the king's control tightened. You learn to speak with your eyes, with subtle hints, with timely smiles, and just enough bows. You must become a skilled actor, hiding all true emotions to avoid being seen as disloyal or insufficiently clever, to keep the king's favor. Sometimes, Henry asks about the smallest details of your day, what you ate, who you met, what you thought of an event. But it's not simple care, it's control, probing, searching for a slip to use as grounds for punishment if he's displeased. You feel the weight of those questions, heavy and threatening, keeping you perpetually alert, revealing nothing that could spark suspicion. In private meetings, Henry might say things you can't react to. "Do you know what I could do if I wanted, or I've lost many for trusting wrongly?" These aren't just warnings but cold reminders that in this palace trust is the most precious thing, yet the easiest to betray and the costliest to lose. You feel like you're walking a thin wire, one side life, the other death, where a single misstep could send you plummeting. It's not just physical fear, but a mental dread of losing yourself in this vortex of power and suspicion. You must become invisible, leaving no trace, giving no reason to be questioned or suspected. Each of Henry's words is a test, and you must pass with silence, wisdom, and patience almost unbearable. You realize that in this palace, it's not strength or beauty that ensures survival, but the ability to never speak wrongly, to never disappoint the king even once. And that's the inescapable obsession, following your every step, every breath, in these days filled with danger and threats. In the endless corridors of Hampton Court Palace, where footsteps echo steadily like the cold beat of fate, whispers begin to seep through every corner, every shadowed nook of the candlelit castle. You don't know exactly when it started, but these whispers are no longer ordinary gossip. They've become invisible daggers aimed at you. "She'll be the next one. Henry's got his eye on her. No one survives long in the king's favor. They say she's in the secret room, where no one comes or goes." These words reverberate in dining halls, where maids gossip, in dressing rooms where servants prepare for feasts, even in the dark chambers where courtiers plot in hushed tones. Each whisper is like a stone thrown at your face, forcing you to look up to see who's speaking, but all you catch are fleeting shadows of those around you avoiding your gaze. Most haunting are the whispers during prayers in the palace's small chapel, where the old priest with piercing eyes, as if he knows every secret, occasionally turns to you and murmurs, "Be careful, they see you not only with the king's eyes but with those of faith and judgment." Your shoulders feel weighed down by 100 pounds. Each step through the corridors, a battle not to collapse under this silent but relentless terror. These whispers aren't just threats but undeniable warnings. No one called the king's mistress escapes this web of power without injury, without paying in blood and tears. You recall the faces that came before you. Anne Boleyn, Catherine Howard, Jane Seymour, all heard such whispers, and then vanished from this world, mysteriously, or in agony. You can't help but shiver each time you hear their stories, tales that are both curses and vivid lessons for the living. In the stillness amid the rumors, you realize survival in the palace isn't about beauty or charm, but about silence and cunning, to avoid becoming the target of dangerous gossip. These whispers are like hidden traps, waiting for a misstep to drag you into the abyss of suspicion, betrayal, and death. You learn not to meet anyone's eyes when you hear these tales, to keep yourself from being drawn into malicious word games. You know any lapse, a careless glance, a mistimed smile, could make you the next subject of these terrifying rumors. You wonder how long you can endure this stifling atmosphere of whispers, when those around you are just waiting for you to air, so they can topple you mercilessly. The whispers don't just frighten you, they awaken you, making you realize there's no room for weakness or naivety in this harsh life. You must become stronger, sharper, and above all, know how to shield yourself from the invisible knives of words aimed at you every moment. You stand alone in a shadowed corner of the corridor, hearing the echo of whispers like history's sighs, and tell yourself that if you survive this storm of rumors and suspicion, you'll be a legend, or a forgotten shadow within the cold stone walls of Hampton Court Palace. Thinking you might find a gap to escape Henry VIII's harsh scrutiny and control, you begin to learn how to avoid him like a forest creature dodging a predator. You move quietly through long corridors and shadowed rooms, trying not to draw the attention of the king or his loyal guards who trail your every step. But no matter how clever or discreet you are, the palace allows no escape from surveillance. Just when you think you've slipped away, a figure emerges from a dark corner, a hand grabs your sleeve, a stern gaze pierces you, making your heart pound. Henry's guards aren't just armored sentinels standing rigidly, they're invisible eyes, moving shadows, always silent, and never relenting in their watch over anyone in the king's circle of power. You realize their presence isn't just to protect the king, but to control and intimidate, ensuring you can't stray from the path he's set. You once tried hiding in the library, where ancient books and dim light might conceal you briefly, but soon a guard appeared, questioning with a sharp gaze, pulling you back to reality. You tried lingering near the kitchens, hoping to blend into the noise and smell of food, but no footsteps always followed, suffocating you. You learn to watch their reactions, to avoid their eyes, to steer clear of unnecessary talk, and especially to avoid places that might draw attention. But no matter how cautious you are, their presence is an invisible net covering the entire palace, leaving no room to hide. These guards aren't just watchers but messengers, relaying every minor action of yours to the king. Once you overheard two guards whispering that His Majesty is displeased. She spends too much time alone in her chamber. You know a single remark like that reaching the king's ears could land you in a cell for questioning. You begin to live in a state of constant surveillance, never able to relax your mind or find peace in your heart. Every step, every glance, every breath could be grounds for suspicion or judgment. You learn to adjust your breathing, keep a faint smile, and speak just enough to avoid notice while not arousing doubt. You must become a flawless actor, a puppet performing in a dangerous game with no room for error. But the exhaustion and pressure of constant monitoring make you feel like you're losing yourself. You remember days at home, where you could go anywhere, do anything without fear, where laughter and honest looks weren't threatened by suspicion and power. Now, you face a harsh reality. You're no longer free, but a prisoner in a grand palace full of traps, and your only freedom is surviving day by day. One day, thinking you could escape the king's gaze by hiding in the royal gardens, a strong hand pulls you back, and a cold voice whispers in your ear, His Majesty is looking for you. You realize no place in the palace is safe, no place where you can truly hide from the guard's watch and Henry's relentless scrutiny. You learn to accept that your life is now a series of steps in darkness, a ceaseless race to preserve your life in a world where one wrong move could sweep you away forever. And whether you want it or not, no matter how strong you are, you can't escape the guard's eyes, or through them, the cruel surveillance of Henry VIII. You stand before the mirror in your small chamber, the flickering oil lamp casting light on a face, forcing a smile while your heart shatters. That smile isn't one of joy, but a delicate mask you've learned to wear to survive this trap-filled palace. Each day, you must smile at Henry, at courtiers, at people you can never trust. But deep inside, you feel your heart breaking into tiny pieces under the unbearable pressure and indescribable loneliness. As the king's eyes follow you with a strange mix of desire and danger, you begin to prepare for what no one wants to consider, writing your will. No one tells you to put it on paper, no one allows you pen and ink, but in your mind, the words form, the final words you want to leave this world if tomorrow you're gone. You think of your parents, who sent you to the palace with hopes and dreams, now perhaps never to see you again. You think of broken dreams, unshared loves, untold secrets, but you know what matters most is preparing a plan to survive, a way to endure as the world around you crumbles. You learn to smile though screaming inside, to speak gently though filled with doubt and panic. You know Henry watches you not just for allure, but to detect weakness, to punish anyone daring to challenge his power. When he asks about your feelings or private thoughts, those are battles you can't afford to lose. You must answer deftly, keep your voice steady, make the king see you as trustworthy, controllable. But when night falls and doors shut, you're truly yourself, a small woman grappling with unrelenting fear, with thoughts of death and betrayal lurking. In those moments you wonder if there's any escape, if love or favor could be strong enough to keep you safe in this cruel world. You begin writing words no one will know, unspoken words, as a way to release pain and loneliness, to preserve yourself in the dark days ahead. You know tomorrow, or the day after, you may no longer smile, speak or live, but at least you'll have a story, a message, a final glimmer of light to avoid being forgotten in the palace's shadows. And no matter how it ends, you resolve not to become a nameless figure, a silent ghost forgotten. You smile once more at the mirror, a smile of resilience, of relentless struggle, then sit, take a pen in your mind, and begin writing your will. For in Henry VIII's palace, that may be the only way to hold on to a piece of yourself. You always thought dungeons existed, only in optimistic tales or embellished histories, until one day you realize the dungeon beneath Hampton Court Palace isn't just legend, but a haunting reality. It's a network of small, dark cells deep underground, where no sunlight or forgiveness exists, where sighs, sobs, and whispers weave a painful symphony you never want to hear. You hear chilling stories from veteran maids about women who caught the king's eye and then vanished mysteriously, leaving only rumors of their agonizing final days in those solitary cells. The dungeon's smell is unlike anything you've known, a stench of jealousy, spilled blood, betrayal, and dense despair, mixed with the damp mold of cold stone and rotting straw. You sense it even passing the narrow passages to the basement, a grotesque odor that chokes your heart, forcing you to suppress sudden nausea. One day, passing a locked chamber door, you hear faint sobs mixed with a woman's long, desolate sighs, enduring utter loneliness and nameless fear. You don't know who she is, only that if you end up in that cell, you too would join that mournful symphony, no longer knowing tomorrow or life. You begin to fear, not just death but being abandoned and forgotten in the palace's darkest corners. Sometimes you see guards silently open a door and lead a woman into the shadows, no one daring to ask, as if it's the most ordinary thing. You hear stories of those once favored by the king, then, due to sudden jealousy or a careless word, sent to the dungeon, where no one knows if they live or die in silence. The smell of jealousy in the dungeon isn't just emotional, but the scent of wounded power, shattered hopes, and cruel schemes woven by envious hearts. You wonder if you can stay calm and sane to avoid being swept into that vortex, to not become part of the screams never voiced in the dark. Though you've learned to smile, bow, and stay silent, images of the dungeon and vanished acquaintances haunt you, making it impossible to ease your fear as you walk the palace's cold corridors. You know this isn't just a grand palace but a worldly hell, where the price of favor might be eternal confinement within cold stone walls and the ineradicable smell of jealousy. You lie in bed, trying to push these thoughts away, but the stench of jealousy, blood, and betrayal seeps into your dreams, waking you multiple times in the night, terrified of what tomorrow might bring, a punishment, an execution, or a fleeting moment of relief in Henry's favor. And you know, no matter what you do, no matter how cautious, the dungeon below remains a lurking shadow, waiting for your smallest misstep to open its cold stone door and swallow every hope of survival. That night, as all the palace lights go out, leaving only the cold wind whistling through stone window cracks and the quiet echo of footsteps in the long corridor, you try to find a shred of peace in your hard, cold bed. Your heart pounds so fiercely it feels like it might burst, your ragged breaths mingling with the steady breathing of sleeping figures around you, but you can't close your eyes. Suddenly, a knock at the door, light but resolute, each tap reminding you no place in this palace is safe, even in the dark of night. "Come in," a maid's voice says, softly but sharply. You sit up, heart leaping, as you know for certain this isn't an ordinary visitor, but the king himself. You hastily don a thin robe, step out into the dim darkness, trying not to make a sound. The corridor is long and dark, the cold stone walls holding centuries of painful stories and silent deaths. You hear the wind lash the windows, its howl threatening to tear through the oppressive silence. Guards follow you without a word, their eyes sharp as knives, always vigilant of your every move. At the king's chamber, the door opens like a gate to a world of power and fear. Henry VIII sits there, under the faint light of a single candle, his gaze cold yet piercing. He says nothing, only looks at you as if weighing every part of your soul. You feel his heavy breath, smelling of wine, tobacco, and the sweat of a man who's ruled through years of pressure and pain. He stands, steps closer, and speaks in a warm but dangerous tone. Are you ready? You don't know what he means, but your gut signals this isn't a simple question but a warning. You try to stay calm, nodding faintly. He smiles inscrutably, then takes your hand, his grip firm but not painful. Tonight is a test. You must prove you're worthy of my trust. You hear the door close behind, leaving you and him in the small room, lit only by the candle's faint glow. The air is thick with tension and unspoken things. You understand this isn't a casual talk, but a battle of wits, a test to determine your fate. Henry begins asking vague questions, probing and testing, questions you must answer as deftly and delicately as possible. You feel each response being carefully weighed, a single slip potentially plunging you into a bottomless abyss. The night drags on, the wind still hissing through window cracks, as if death itself waits outside, awaiting its call. You know that even if you pass tonight's test, tomorrow will bring new dangers and traps. But in that moment, you focus on each question, each word from Henry, trying to preserve your survival at all costs. As the first light of dawn creeps through the window, you stand there, exhausted but unyielding, knowing you've survived this night, but the war to stay alive in Henry VIII's palace has only just begun. Henry VIII changes so starkly that those around him can't help but shudder. Once a youthful, vibrant and authoritative king, he's now an aged, weary beast, with no patience left for the complex courtly games he once orchestrated. His body weakens, chronic illnesses and joint pain hinder his movement, but his heart still burns with endless anger and suspicion. Whenever Henry enters a room, the palace air grows heavy, as if a storm is about to break. He's no longer the polished king of old, but a growling beast, ready to tear apart anyone he deems a threat. His words become curt, sharp and cunning, no longer poetic tales or sweet nothings for lovers. Instead, they're chilling questions and probing looks that seem to pierce your very soul. He begins to suspect everyone, from courtiers to closest maids, and especially you. Every small action, every careless word could be misread as betrayal, scheming, or insult. You sense the shift in his treatment, from tender gestures to coldness, and even latent hostility. Some nights, he flies into rages, shouting and threatening, leaving you to bow and endure, your heart aching relentlessly. Henry's paranoia and anxiety grow, making him erratic and impulsive, turning the palace into a hive ready to explode. You know not only you are threatened, but also those once close to the king, now living in utter fear. Former friends and advisors become enemies in his eyes, suspected and ruthlessly removed. You witness many arrested, interrogated, even executed over mere rumors or a mistimed glance. You realize Henry's change isn't just age or illness, but a sign of mental collapse and loss of control, making England's most powerful king a danger to all. You feel like you're on a ship in a stormy sea, unsure when the tempest will strike and sink everything. His patience is gone, and you understand that to survive, you must quickly adapt to this change, learning to please an unpredictable beast. You can't afford mistakes, can't show fatigue or weakness, for a single lapse could crush you mercilessly. In rare moments when Henry seems calm, you try to find some light and faith, but those moments grow scarce and fleeting. You know you must become sharper, stronger, and wiser to navigate the raging storm named Henry VIII, a king turned into an impatient, wild-eyed beast, ready to devour anyone in his sights. You've heard that, in the Tudor palace, a single rumor, no matter how false, can become a noose around your neck and the end of your life. And now, you're living that nightmare, where an extra word, an unverified story, can cost you your life, your everything, quite literally. It all starts with a faint whisper, spreading swiftly through the cold stone corridors of Hampton Court, like a small spark igniting a horrific, uncontrollable blaze. A forged letter reaches the king's courtiers, accusing you of plotting treason, secretly aligning with the court's enemies. You know you didn't write that letter, never even knew of it, but in this world, truth matters less than power and suspicion. The story spreads like lightning, each person adding a detail, making it so terrifying and convincing that no one dares dispute it. You see the eyes of those who once smiled warmly, now turn cold, suspicious, hostile. Those you thought you could rely on begin to avoid you, unwilling to linger or talk too long. Whispers become invisible knives, slicing into your heart with every cut. Henry hears of the forged letter and the suspicion flooding the palace. He doesn't need to read its contents, for a single accusation is enough for him to decide. That decision is a sentence without trial, a sentence on your life. The courtiers immediately begin an investigation, a process devoid of fairness or humanity, only coercion and threats. You're summoned to an interrogation room, where endless questions are hurled at you, each laced with menace and punishment. You try to explain, to deny, but every word is dismissed as deception or evidence of guilt. You feel the coldness of the eyes in the room, eyes of people not seeking truth, but a result that serves their faction. The false rumor doesn't just shake your position, but pushes you closer to the executioner's blade. In the days that follow, you live in utter fear, unsure when the sentence will be carried out, when your head might rest on the block for all to see and remind each other of the cost of betrayal. You try to stay calm, to maintain the clarity needed to face relentless challenges, but anxiety and dread coil around you like tightening ropes. You can't trust anyone, even the closest, as suspicion spreads like a plague, making every relationship fragile and calculating. In your loneliest moments, you wonder if you can survive this ordeal, if someone out there is waiting to save you from the approaching tragedy. But in Henry VIII's palace, there's no room for mercy or miracles, only cruelty and coldness, where a single false rumor can cost you your head in the most literal and severe sense. You lie in the darkness of your room, thinking of the days ahead, of the inevitable end waiting, and tell yourself that if you survive, you'll no longer be the same. You'll become a warrior, a survivor in a world rife with dangers and traps, where truth can be twisted, and life belongs only to those who accept and overcome utter fear. As time passes, you realize the naive emotion once called loving the king has faded, replaced by a deep, persistent fear of Henry VIII, the most powerful yet ruthless man you've ever met. You can't recall the last time you felt safe near him, for every encounter is suffused with suffocating tension, as if you're walking a thin thread between life and death. Each of the king's glances is no longer one of love or affection, but of scrutiny, suspicion, and sometimes a latent hostility that leaves you breathless. You learn to dodge direct questions, avoid overly intimate gestures, but it's never enough to dispel his relentless surveillance. You once tried to understand why Henry changed, searching for reasons to forgive, to cling to some remnant of affection, but you only see unhealed scars on his soul, wounds of power, age, paranoia, and uncontrollable jealousy. You remember his outbursts, moments when he didn't hide his contempt as he looked at you, making you feel like a weakling awaiting death. You're no longer the lover he wants to cherish, but prey in a brutal game of power, where survival is reserved for those who vanish at the right moment, or stay silent long enough to go unnoticed. That fear doesn't just keep you awake, but makes you colder, more distrustful, shielding yourself with a thicker shell. You no longer open your heart or share your thoughts, no longer expect empathy or affection from the king, knowing it's a futile dream in this cruel world. You once saw him as a man, a husband, a father, a king, but now, in your eyes, he's only a symbol of fear, an old beast waiting to pounce on the weakest prey. You feel increasingly estranged from your own emotions, choked daily by the weight of fear and suspicion. Sometimes, you stand before the mirror, looking into your own eyes, wondering if you have the strength to keep surviving this deadly struggle. You don't know if you can retain any humanity in this world of darkness and violence, where survival hinges not on love or loyalty, but on evading judgment and punishment. Yet, somehow, you know fear is what keeps you here, the energy fueling your vigilance and caution in every step, every word. Fear has replaced love, becoming the harshest teacher, guiding you to survive in a palace where each day feels like an endless battle. You know that without this fear, you might have fallen long ago, become another name on the list of lovers who came and vanished mysteriously under Henry VIII's shadow. In the silence of the night, you tell yourself that though you no longer love the king, you must live, for life is now the most precious gift you can hold in this world of deadly dangers. You've endured enough loneliness and suspicion in this vast palace, but there's one person you feel you can trust, your closest friend, a maid who stood by you through storms and schemes. She doesn't speak much, doesn't show off, but her eyes and small gestures always bring you comfort amid a sea of peril. Though sharing the same fate as the king's mistress, she has a calmness and resilience you long to possess. But then, one day, everything changes. Rumors spread through the court that she's suspected of involvement in a treasonous plot, and not only you, but she too stands on the edge of disaster. You sense the shift in how people look at her, from warmth to cold, contemptuous stares. One evening, as you try to stay calm in your small room, you hear an urgent knock. The door opens, and guards appear, formal but cold, taking her away without explanation or warning. She looks at you one last time, her eyes both sad and reassuring, as if saying, "Be strong, you won't be alone." You stand there, hands trembling, unable to do anything but watch the only friend you could trust, being swept into the darkness of betrayal and execution. You understand that friendship in this palace is a precious gift, but also a curse, for when one falls into a trap, the other can't escape the tragedy. In the days that follow, you live in utter fear, knowing the fragile thread keeping you from her fate is fraying. You realize there's no real protection in the palace, except yourself, and even the closest can become allies or enemies at any moment. But deep down, you cling to a faint hope that you won't walk that path alone, that you'll find a way to survive, no matter the cost. The story of your closest friend being dragged away is the harshest warning in this palace. A single misstep, a misplaced word or action, could see you share her fate, forgotten, stripped of life and honor, without mercy. You know there's no time to hesitate or fear, only to stay alert, strong and resilient to face the brutal challenges ahead. And no matter what, your only trusted friend, even if she's the one to be hanged alongside you, has taught you that survival in this world of shadows and traps is a relentless fight, where friendship and loyalty must be cherished more than life itself. In the dead of night, when all the palace lights are out, leaving only the cold wind hissing through stone window cracks, you lie in the thick darkness, trying to keep your breathing steady while your mind races with fears. Suddenly, a knock at the door, gentle but resolute, each tap like a drumbeat signaling an approaching storm. You don't need a clock to know it's 3 in the morning, the hour no one wants to be disturbed, the hour when only dire news awakens fragile souls like you. The knock, tap, tap, echoes in the small room, shredding the fragile peace you've tried to build over the past hours. You know, instantly, this isn't breakfast being delivered, not an invitation for a garden stroll or a cozy candlelit meeting. This is the call of death, the call of unavoidable fate. You sit up, heart pounding so hard you think the knocks are your own frantic heartbeat. You try to stay calm, pulling the blanket to your chin, breathing lightly, and walk to the door, hands trembling. You slide the bolt, but don't fully open it, just enough to peek outside. A guard stands there, his eyes cold and devoid of pity. "His Majesty wishes to see you," he says, voice flat, as if it's a routine task, unrelated to your life or death. You don't respond, only turn to grab your robe, slip it on, and follow him through the long icy corridors, where each stone seems steeped in centuries of tragic tales. It feels like your soul is being choked, each step a knife slicing into your heart, forcing you to think of the price of the king's favor. At the king's chamber, the door opens to a suffocating atmosphere. Henry VIII stands there, not in his usual robe, but simple nightclothes, yet his eyes remain sharp as a blade, never leaving you. He says nothing at first, just stands as if weighing you from head to toe. You feel his hot breath, laced with wine, tobacco, and the sweat of a man who's ruled through years of pressure and pain. Finally, he speaks, voice low and commanding. "Tonight, you'll prove you're worthy of my trust." You don't know what that means, but fear and dread flood your body. In the small room, just the two of you, you know tonight could be a turning point, a harsh test you can't evade. You try to stay calm, bracing for whatever challenges may come, though deep down you know you're on the edge of life and death. The wind still howls outside the windows, the clock ticks each hour, reminding you time is slipping away, and you can do nothing but wait. The night feels endless, death's presence looming close, but you know you must be resilient, must survive, even if it means smiling through pain, bowing in powerlessness, and waiting for a small miracle to reach the next day. As dawn's first light creeps through the window, you stand exhausted but unbroken, knowing you've survived this night, but the war to stay alive in Henry VIII's palace has only begun. The long night passes with each tick of the clock, echoing like slaughter in your mind, the faint light of dawn finally piercing the cold stone windows of Hampton Court Palace. You're still alive. It's a miracle, or perhaps a cursed gift, granted only to the strongest. If you're alive this morning, it means you've survived a night of nightmares, a brutal test that many have fallen to before your eyes. But survival doesn't mean victory. It's only the first step in a long journey filled with unprecedented dangers and traps. You stand there trembling, eyes barely believing you're still breathing, still seeing the world beyond this dark room. It feels like being born again, but into a world where only those who fight and endure can survive. You know that if you stand before the king tomorrow, you'll become a legend, a living symbol of resilience and courage that women before you could only dream of. Your story will be told in the palace's cold corridors, in history books written in blood and tears, as a reminder of the power of human will, in the brutal context of power and jealousy. But there's another, equally terrifying possibility. If you don't survive, you'll become a ghost, a specter wandering the dark corridors, your sighs blending with the howling wind and church bells, making the living shudder and recall the tragic fates of those who passed through this palace. You feel relief mixed with pain, survival intertwined with loss, making you unable to forget the days gone by and the challenges awaiting. You stand in the new day's light, knowing each step will be a battle, each word a dagger, each smile a mask to hide the truth within. But for now, you've survived until morning, and that's what matters most. You're no longer the frightened girl who entered the palace, but a warrior, a legend, or at least a survivor. Your story isn't just about love or power, but about survival in a world where death always lurks, where only the brave and persistent can write their own fate. You know that whatever tomorrow brings, be it the light of freedom or the darkness of death, you haven't been defeated, haven't become a nameless figure forgotten in history. You step out of the room, take a deep breath, feel the fresh morning air and the first sunlight on your face, and you know that your story, the story of Henry VIII's lover, doesn't end here. It's only just begun. The story of Henry VIII's lover's life in the Tudor palace, with its lurking dangers, relentless surveillance, and constant fear of betrayal or condemnation, though set over 500 years ago, still offers profound lessons for modern life in the United States today. In the story, the protagonist must learn to navigate wisely through a vortex of power and suspicion, mastering emotions to avoid misunderstanding or exploitation. This mirrors a serious modern reality. In today's workplace or social settings, communication savvy, keen observation, and selective sharing are vital for building healthy relationships and avoiding unnecessary trouble. For example, the character had to learn to smile despite inner turmoil, to listen rather than speak too much, and to stay vigilant against rumors, skills equally crucial in today's professional world and social media landscape. Moreover, the story highlights the strength of clarity and self-protection when facing pressure and challenges, a necessity in America's highly competitive society. The protagonist's constant monitoring and life under suspicion remind us of the importance of transparency and trust building in personal and professional relationships. Finally, the greatest lesson is that, in any circumstance, persistence and adaptability are keys to survival and growth. While we don't live in a palace rife with schemes like the story, modern life's pressures and challenges are no less complex. Maintaining resilience, skillfully handling difficult situations, and building lasting relationships are how each person can survive and thrive in today's world. If you find the story of the dangerous life in Henry VIII's palace compelling, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch the next thrilling and surprising parts. Thank you for following along, and see you in the next video, where we'll uncover more dark secrets of the Tudor court.